Hi, everybody. It's Monday. I hope you had a good weekend. I did a lot of organizing this last weekend because I think I told you Friday that I was moving my office. So that was, I don't know if I could say that was fun, but we had a nice weather weekend here in the Northeast also. I know I got out and got some sun. Don't tell Dr. Schultz. Remember, tomorrow I have Dr. Neil Schultz coming on, my dermatologist. You guys all loved him the last time he was on. And we're going to be talking about skin cancer because May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month. Don't tell him that I was out in the sun. Actually, he knows I'm a sun lover. But I don't burn because I'm careful. I just want to say hi to a few of you. I see Anna Mae Foley is here, and Beth, oh, good. Hi, Beth Malik and Mindy. You were here early with me this morning, and Diane Robbins and Jeanette Persons. What's it like out there in North Dakota? I don't remember looking this morning at the weather. Hi, Laura. I know it's gorgeous out there in Cardiff by the sea, the weather's always nice in the San Diego area. Christine Kraling, hey, Lehigh Valley. Tammy Lewis, happy Monday. Vincent, I think you said you're in Brooklyn, not actually in Manhattan. And Ann Wesson from Ohio, and Cricket from Bluebell, Pennsylvania. Marty, you say, I had skin cancer on my forehead several years ago. You don't have to burn to get it. Yeah, but we're going to hear that 5 burns really ups your risk. I've definitely had more than 5 sunburns. But they were all when I was younger. Maggie Roth, you're from Winter Springs, Florida. Sherry Pollard from out in Illinois. All right, so today is on my list. I always look at the list. National No Dirty Dishes Day. How did that get on the list? That's what I want to know. Which I guess just means we're all going to use paper plates all day, right? No dirty dishes day. I don't know. So I moved this past Friday, and I think it's good every now and then. People don't want to move, but it can really be good because when you move, whether you move to another side of the country or whether you move on to the other side of the street, you have to touch everything, and you have to ask, do I really still need this or want this? For instance, I had all these file cabinets, and in all these file cabinets were files with paper because we used to live in a paper world. It was the Filofax world. Remember that? Oh my God, if I'd ever lost my Filofax machine, I would have been in so much trouble. But we don't live in that world anymore. And every time we'd go through all these files, and I'd say, but this is a project I did, 4 years ago. And Nicole, my assistant, would say, yeah, it's in your computer. It all got generated from your computer. You don't need the actual paper file anymore. So, and she's right. But if you come from the Filofax world, the fax machine world, the paper world, it's kind of an emotional thing to let go. You're letting go of that world as you let go of all those files. I have to admit that after a while, I kind of got into it. And I'd take a big thing and I said, I'm sure I don't need these. And I just started chucking everything. And to be very honest, it was kind of fun. And it made me feel good. It was kind of like a cleansing experience. I don't know if you've ever read the book by Marie Kondo. I wrote it here, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. My daughter, Lindsay, gave me this book. And at first I thought, this is so crazy. Because she tells you that you should go through everything in your house. And in my case, it was everything in my office, and take every article and ask it, and put a sweater on and say, do I want this? Am I going to be wearing it? If I've put it on 6 times and never worn it, then she says you are supposed to thank it for its service to you, and then chuck it. All right, you might think that's a little foolish or a little freaky, but I have to admit, I looked in my underwear drawer one day, and I think one of my bras said to me, your boobs look a little droopy in this bra. And I threw that bra right away. I am telling you. So I kind of got into the Marie Kondo thing, but boy, in my office, I really got into it. And I didn't think it was so freaky. I decided I was a fearless, fire-fueled female. And if you're wondering why I'm finding all these F words in order to describe my move, there is a reason. Because I'm going to be speaking today with this an interesting guy. Came up with such an interesting concept. His name is Shaun Rawls, and he wrote a book that was supposed to have come out right now, but it's been pushed back, like so many books got their pub date pushed back. But are you ready for it's called Effortless. I had to be careful the way I said that. Effortless. 18 F words to reframe and repurpose your life. And no, we're not talking about that F word, okay? But I had to find out what F words was he actually talking about and how they could be used to change your life. They were words like flexible, I get that one, float, forgive, awesome, fix, forking, and foxhole. All right, I don't know about you, but as soon as I heard those F words, I just had to know more. So we have with us today the man who wrote the Effortless book, Shaun Rawls. Hey, how you doing?
I'm awesome, Joan. How are you?
I am terrific, and I love this concept.
Well, I love that you love this concept, so I really appreciate it, and it's going to be fun to talk about, I think.
We'll get the obvious out of the way. We're not talking about effort. You talk about taking those moments that are those effort moments and turning them into effortless moments. How did you come up with the concept?
You know, I just spent a lot of time thinking about the challenges that we all go through as human beings, and whether it's we come across struggles in our life or business or friends, our children, our parents, and we tend to approach those in different ways, but it's really our ability to kind of think about new ways that can help get us out of challenging times with a more learning-based and positive experience from it all.
So you're one of the authors who had their pub date pushed back. Did that freak you out?
It did freak me out. I was so excited. And what was great is my pub date was going to be Cinco de Mayo. So I thought, the whole world's going to be celebrating this book. It's going to be great. But yeah, and then life as we know it changed. And I think everybody's like, let's kind of reassess and do some things in a more timely manner.
All right. Well, so everyone will have to wait to get the actual book, but you're not going to forget the name, Effortless.
I hope not. Not that you're saying it. No, you're the national spokesperson now.
So one of the favorite words of mine that I want to start with is foxhole.
Sure.
Some of them I can figure out, but that one really intrigued me.
Sure. Well, if you've ever been through anything challenging in your life, you know how important the right people are to have around you, right?
Oh.
So foxhole.
You have in your foxhole.
In your foxhole. So in the military, foxholes were built to help you fire or to help you hide and be safe. And sometimes they accomplish both, but they're small and they're not really luxurious. But the importance of whether you live or die in a military situation has a lot to do with the people that are in the foxhole with you. So foxhole for me is about making sure that you realize that there's a difference between the vital few and the trivial many in your life. And that if you want to survive the most challenging times in your life, that you will have a focus on having the right people around you at any given time. So foxhole is about people.
But that's an incredibly, because I have something in my book that says your tribe determines your vibe.
Yes. Yes.
Kind of the same thing, right?
Yes. Well, isn't it funny? I mean, we've all been through crises. If you've lived long enough, you've been through crises, right? So isn't it interesting who shows up, but more interesting who doesn't? And a lot of times we expect certain people to be there, but they're not. And then we have people that come into our lives that are pillars and rocks for us that we would have never thought at a particular time. And it gives us a chance to kind of reassess who's in your foxhole. And I think the time that we're in right now, if you're not figuring out what's important and who's important and what you want to carry with you out of this mess, you're missing an opportunity to make something really good for yourself out of this time.
I've got Jonathan Merck, who we both know so well. Shaun and I actually share two things. It's people in our foxhole.
It's people in our foxhole.
It's people in our foxhole. We have Laura Morton, and she's on today. Hi, Shaun. I love this book. Well, you better, Laura. You helped write it. And Jonathan Merckx is also saying hi to you. And of course, that gives us our chance for the shameless plug of the day, which we always do, Shaun.
Well, here's mine. Here's mine.
Oh, good. All right. Terrific. I love that. All right. So, and we have somebody here saying, I love this concept. What a cool, this is Linda Griffin Thomas. What a cool concept. Thanks for sharing. I will patiently await the book's release.
I love it. Thank you, Linda.
And interestingly, when I of course, Laura let me see a little bit of your manuscript.
Great.
And it sounds like we come from very much the same place, interestingly.
It's funny how the world intersects people at the right times, right?
Isn't it? Isn't it? It really is. For instance, flexible. I talk about you've got to like let go of the mistakes in the past. And there's a wonderful saying that, stand like mountain, but flow like water. That was a wonderful, wonderful book by Brian Luke Seward. Somebody like you that talks about figuring out how to find your happiness and how to fix things by, forgiving and forgetting, which we'll get to. But flexible.
Sure.
That's such an important word.
Isn't it right now? Don't you find that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Everybody, the entire world is trying to figure out how flexible they can be, whether it's with their finances, with their spouse, with their children, with the confines of their house. In sports, one of the things I like about sports is one of the things we realize is it's not always the best game plan that wins. It's usually the best game changes. It changes to a game plan that will win a game. And I think this time that we're in is a lot like a halftime in that you can kind of go back. We're in the locker room and we're going, does this work for us? Does that work for? It's almost like your chucking story of The Office is, I'm going to get rid of this stuff. I'm going to keep this stuff. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do that. This is going to be what's going to happen from now on. And I think we have the ability right now to make some flexible changes based on what's environment. But if we're paying attention, there should be some things that we want to change, and that creates flexibility. And that's part of the definition entirely for me. Yeah,
Becky Peterson is saying, let's make something good out of this time. And, I don't know if it's one of your efforts, but going with the flow is also, that's kind of what you're saying. And, sometimes people, they'll get so ridden with anxiety that they forget. I think there's a lot of things that have happened during this time that are going to stay or that we're going to keep around. And it doesn't do any good just to stand there and be absolutely anxious. We all have to go with the flow.
Well, we have to go with the flow, but most everybody has a process where when change comes at you, most people have a reaction that says, I'm going to resist it.
Yeah.
And if you started off this process 2 months ago resisting it, that was probably very normal. If you're still resisting it, you're probably a little slow to the party. Because at some point your resistance has to give way to reality on some level, and you have to find a new way of operating.
Well, there's an F word. It makes us laugh just to say it, doesn't it? That could be helpful to people right now, I'm told. Forking.
Forking. I love forking. And forking is a look back at your life and realizing you have to start there. And you look back and you go, there were points in your life that were a directional change. You could have gone this way, but you went that way. And sometimes those directional changes were, you decided you wanted to take a new job. You decided you wanted to get married. You decided you wanted to move. Sometimes those decisions were made for us. We lost our job. We got a divorce when we didn't want to get a divorce. someone passed away that we cared about. And that moves us in a different direction. But in either way, when you look back at the major changes of direction in your life, I call those points fork points. And
like a fork in the road.
A fork in the road. So when you look back, you realize if that hadn't happened, and I hated it, and I didn't want to do that, and I resisted it the entire time, and I cried about it, and I had a pity party. But if that hadn't happened for me, I would have never ended up here, and I certainly never would have ended up here or with this person that I'm supposed to be with. And you look back and you realize that they all had meaning. Even it might have taken 5 or 10 years to figure out, but there was true meaning there. And I think what we're happening right now, I think this is a fork for everybody.
Absolutely.
We're going to look back and go, wow. And if that hadn't happened, I would have never started my business doing this. I would have never taken my job home. I would have never started doing my job with the efficiencies of technology or virtual tours or whatever it is. I just think this is causing, in some ways, it's speeding up the way life is going to be lived instead of letting us tiptoe our way into those changes.
But usually individuals have a fork in the road. I think this time everyone's going to be on the same fork in the road.
Everybody's starting over. It's like everybody drew the card in Monopoly that says back to start over, and everybody's going back to zero.
Another one that I have not figured out but I'm really intrigued with is float.
I love float.
Okay, so what's float?
I love float. So I mean, the chapter, there's a quote at the top of every chapter of this book. And I have a Winnie the Pooh quote at the top of float. And it says, sometimes doing nothing leads to the very best something.
Oh.
And float is about taking the times that we get to do nothing and embracing it. We right now, everybody was going 100 miles an hour. 2 months ago, the brakes got hit and we went from 100 to 0, right? Not everybody's going to make the most of that time, but float is about leaning into the pause. It's about not rushing back to reality, but really taking the pause for what it is as an opportunity to be still, to listen, to hear, to feel, and understand that pauses are given to us so that we can stop our own chaos and listen to some of the direction of the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. Because sometimes when we're our quietest, this is why meditation is so popular for people, because it's a float during the day, and it's an opportunity to put everything aside and listen, stop talking and listen, and try to listen in the deepest places and the quietest places. And if you can hear when it's quiet, you're probably going to find some answers that are going to help you feel a lot better about what you're about to embark on.
I can tell you love quotes too.
I do.
I love quotes. They're like a small amount of words that make such a big impact, but they can stay with you. I remember a quote I used in a past book was that to retreat is not to surrender, but to regroup and refresh so that you can go back and approach the circumstances with better energy and focus.
Absolutely. Well, if you look at when float, like people graduate college and take a gap year, right? People take sabbaticals. People take just voluntary time off to go clear their head and cleanse their soul. And they embrace it when it's their decision. But sometimes life creates a float moment for us, or a sabbatical, or a gap year that we didn't ask for. But that doesn't mean we're not supposed to have it, right? So we usually find that there's true meaning. And I come from the school that the universe is helping us become our best self and live our best life. We usually fight it. So for me, float is about trusting that concept that I need to be still and figure out where I'm supposed to go, because I believe that I'm supposed to go in great places and in great directions and do great things. And I bet if I'm quiet enough, I can figure out the next steps I'm supposed to take in that direction.
Yeah, I found a quote that I used in this book right toward the end that said, I may not have gone where I intended to go, but I think I ended up where I needed to be.
Right.
And, I'd always intended to be a doctor and didn't become a doctor. Worked in a hospital for a short time. That was the fork that changed my direction. And yet, here later in my life, I'm so involved in women's health and, dissemination of breast cancer information. I think I ended up where I needed to be. We have a few people saying, Becky Peterson, yes, the pause has been good, leading to, leading to the best something ahead. It's been a treasure. Marion Lowry from Colchester, Connecticut says, I'm in the midst of organizing and cleaning out. I am a 1950 baby. So we're separated at birth here, Marion. 1950 baby, so I tend to hold on to everything. My new approach is to touch each paper once and do something with it. File it or throw it out.
I love it.
I had a file system. It was like 2 huge, tall drawers, and they were completely jam-packed with files. And when we got done chucking everything, we had about 10 file folders that we said we should probably keep. And
that was it.
That was it.
That much of a drawer.
I gave the file cabinets away. We can give our fax machine away. I had all these old Filofaxes and day runners that I had saved. Like, why? And I threw them all away. And I got to tell you, it was kind of fun.
My wife has a great friend who's a fantastic interior designer, and she has a concept of living like you live in a hotel, and it's clean. She wants everything clean. She wants it's definitely a minimalist view, but it's not so much minimalist. It's really looking at what do you really need around you in your spaces and keep it free of clutter. And there's really something to this that when you start taking little steps with it, it really inspires you to want to do more, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. 2 of your words I totally get, but I want to talk about them. I think they're really important for everyone. Forgive and forget. Yeah.
Forgive and forget. It's forgive is a super important one because we tend to be angry at people. And we're either angry at other people or we're angry at ourselves at the core, right? And what I've figured out is your past, if you have anger and resentment from your past, it's toxic for your present and your future, and there's really no room for it in the backpack you're carrying around. So you have to figure out a way to unpack this anger and resentment, whether it's towards yourself or to other people, because you've got better places to go and you don't need it. And the last time I checked, making mistakes, if you're hard on yourself, making mistakes was in the brochure of life. I think we're all supposed to make them. And sometimes it says you're going to make big ones, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be defined by those, or you should be defined by those, and that you have every opportunity to live your best life because of your mistakes, not for any other reason. And when you live long enough, and you and I've lived long enough to know that mistakes are really the things that make us interesting. And we need to be forgiving of those of ourselves, but more importantly, we need to let it go with other people. People come into our life for a reason or a season. And if they're not going to be if they're not going to be with us going forward, don't carry the memory of them, and don't carry anger and resentment towards somebody into your future if they're not going to be a part of it.
Here we have Beth Mack saying forgiveness frees you.
Correct.
She's so right.
Correct. There's a quote about that too, Joan. It's harboring anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. If you taking the poison, expecting the other person to die, it's a good one. It
is a great one. It's a good reminder, but everybody has a problem with it because when we blame other people for there's a part of our ego that really enjoys that because it makes us feel superior in a pretty weak way. And we just need to be careful that when we find that we're feeling superior because we're angry enough at somebody else, it really doesn't make us better than or bigger than, and it certainly doesn't make them less than. It just allows them to take up more real estate in our head than we should allow them to do.
Absolutely. Like you can have a bird's nest. You can have a bird fly over you. Just don't let it make a nest and stay there. There's some kind of
Oh, I like it. I got to find that. That's good. I like that.
by my book.
Laura, oh, is it in there? It's in your book?
In there, absolutely. Here we have Becky Peterson saying, any mistake is worth it if we learned something from it.
Amen, sister. Amen. She's got it. That's exactly right. It's, it's been said that experience isn't what's valuable. It's experience evaluated that is. So just because you lived through something doesn't mean much, but if you lived through it and learned because of it, then that has value to you and other people.
If we've all, as you've just said, we all have effort moments in our life.
Right.
When you encounter one of those, how do you flip it to an effortless moment?
Well, I think you need to realize that, again, you can go one of two directions when things come your way.
Okay.
You can either say effort or you can move towards effortless. And the difference between giving up and giving in and moving up is nothing other than mindset. So I think, first of all, you have to stop, and I think you have to assess where you are, but you have to not be a victim and stop looking for somebody else to blame for any issues that are going on, because it's a complete waste of energy at the end of the day. And then I think you need to look at why and where are you settling for less when you should be asking for more. And I think one of the things that I talk about in the book, fact that we are the most adaptable species on the planet. And one of the problems is we tend to adapt to things that are less than ideal for us because we can and it's easy, versus adapting to things that are more than ideal for us. And I think if you want to move from a life that you're accepting versus a life that you truly want to live, I think you really need to look at this and go, what is it that I want more of? What would make my life better? What do I want more of in my life? And does everything align with that? I heard a preacher once say, if being whatever is a crime, would there be enough evidence to convict you? So I would say, if you tell me, Joan, that you want X, Y, and Z out of your life to live an effortless life, then I would say, if that were a crime, is there enough evidence in your life to convict you of it? Make sense?
I think I have a quote in my book that says, not every chapter of your life is meant to be read out loud.
Well,
that's my answer, and I'm sticking with it.
Well, and I would say the tough points in your life are nothing but chapters of your book. They're not your book, right?
Yeah.
So because a lot of people get overwhelmed when they have adversity or challenges, particularly ones that they didn't ask for, and they feel like it's going to define them in some way, but it may actually make them stronger, better, more interesting, better, more successful than they ever thought possible. So I think, going back, just decide on what you want your life to be and make sure that you've got the people in it and the environment around it that's structured for that to truly occur for you. And first and last, I would say, be true to yourself and who you are. We all have an internal compass, and just because everybody else doesn't agree with it doesn't make our compass wrong. It makes it wrong for other people, but it doesn't make it wrong for us. And I think we have to learn to listen to that little spot inside of us that comes from the right place and knows who we are and what we're capable of.
Well, but a lot of times people can't change because of another F word, fear. I don't know if that's part of your F words, but it's certainly one that gets people stuck. Correct. I think that's probably the way to say it, stuck into making making the right decision at the fork in the road.
Well, fear is, it's not a chapter in the book, but it's talked about a lot in a number of places because people tend to live in that. And if you're a creative person, you probably are creative in a good way, but creativity, there's a 180-degree difference spectrum for everything. So if you're creative positively, you can also be creative in a destructive way for yourself as well. And fear is the way we do that. So we have to be very careful to make sure that the fear that we have is nothing more than projecting something in the future that doesn't exist yet. And you have to bring logic into any emotional thought process if you want to get out of a tailspin, because Fear on fear on fear is nothing more than emotion, emotion, emotion. And before you know it, you have a bonfire of fear. So if you want to stop fear from running away, you have to inject logic into the argument, so that, and it might take a friend like a Laura Morton, right, who comes in and says, Joan, what are you doing? Don't stop thinking like that, because this is the reality of it. And you go, oh, yeah, I hadn't looked at it that way. Thank you for being in my foxhole, right? Thank you for being one of those people that's going to save me. Thank you for being one of those people that's going to stop this progression of fear that I have and bring me back down to where I need to be, so that I can do what I need to do.
Well, it's interesting because it brings up friends. And again, I don't know if friends is one of them, but friends are the people who tell you what you need to hear and not necessarily what you want to hear.
Friends are in the family chapter, because my family chapter is not everybody loves the family they were born to, and they've created their own, right?
Yeah, the friends of the family we choose for ourselves, right?
Exactly. So, I would say, some of the foxhole buddies that we've got are probably friends and family that are truly what we consider family. So family, we get to choose our family at the end of the day, and it doesn't have to be blood related. So be careful about who you pick in that. But if you have the right people that you're calling family, you're probably going to do some great things. And
you also have faith.
I have faith. I love faith. I do love faith. It's it's a personal chapter, but it's definitely one of the biggest comforters for people that are fearful, because everybody's got a different level of spirituality and belief in things religious and otherwise. I happen to be a Christian, and I love my faith, and it's something that's always grounded me and brought me back to center when I get astray. And I find that there's a lot of comfort if you really take things to heart, and having faith in something greater than you, and knowing that that something greater wants what's best for you at all times. And sometimes that means putting us in situations that we don't like for our own good, right? Just like you said, people that tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. I think faith is about that. I think that we have to trust that sometimes there are things we don't like, but they're usually end up, when we look back on those forks in our road, in our life, they are things that actually helped us be better and learn lessons that we never would have learned if we hadn't gone through them.
I want to put Becky Peterson back up, because I love this. I think it's called an acronym of fear.
Oh, yeah. Everything and flourish.
Everything and flourish.
I like it.
2 F words there for you. Flourish.
Flourish.
Isn't that a fabulous one?
I hope Laura's watching. Maybe there's another F book coming out. We got a whole set of F words we're coming up with here.
Well, listen, I Googled all words beginning with F, and it had this list: 3-letter words, 4-letter words, 5-letter. I was on it for like 45 minutes looking at all these different F words. Here's Ida Vasily. Faith is the evidence of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Right. Yeah. Right. We have to have faith, right? And we're in an uncertain time right now. Everybody wants to have answers. Everybody wants to create results. But guess what? We're floating, and we have no control of the boat right now. So you're just going to have faith that we're gonna pick our power back up at the right spot, and we're going to do some awesome things with it. But until then, I think we need to embrace all the things that we're learning about ourselves during this time, because we're only going to be better because of it.
Is fun one of them?
Yes, fun is one of them. Fun is one. Fun is really, it's actually one Laura and I talked a lot about, because people could take this too seriously on some point, but fun is, if you're not having fun, like, when was the last time somebody really, really laughed? I mean, when you really had one of those get together with a high school friend and laughed like a kid again. It's what brings you joy, what puts a smile on your face. And it's that whole mentality is just a muscle that we need to work. And if we've let it have atrophy because we're not using it and having enough fun or having enough gratitude in our life, it just gets rusty. And we just have to get back on that horse and start looking for every little thing that we can to find joy, whether we appreciate the cup of coffee we have in the morning, a flower in the yard, a walk with our spouse. Those little, just noticing those prime the pump for greater areas of joy and gratitude in our life. But we have to start small, and it works out to be big if we practice it.
There's that saying, with age comes wisdom. And I don't know whether it's because I went through cancer and survived, or whether it's just simply being older. I find that it's a time that you tend to look back and say, wow, I went through a lot of challenging things and I made it, and it tends to let me be so much more appreciative in life. I've talked about here that the drive from my home to my office isn't a gorgeous drive, and that I find myself sometimes in the morning, like just seeing the sun come through these beautiful trees, and I'm noticing the beauty of it. I don't think when I was 30 years old, I would have, I don't know, I was just going through life so fast.
Right.
I don't think I would have ever noticed it.
I love that you noticed that. The fact that you're noticing it, I think it speaks volumes as to who you are and how evolved you are and the lessons you've learned in this life, because you look at it and you just go, my God, every day God paints a picture out there for us, and it's called a sunset and a sunrise and everything in between. And if we don't stop to notice these things that are truly miraculous, just because they happen every day doesn't make them any less miraculous than they truly are. It's just, when you start noticing that thing on your drive, Joan, it's funny, because then you'll start noticing things that you love about things at your house or your spouse or your children or yourself or whatever it is. And you just realize there are so many things I have to be thankful for, and that I can just be awestruck by. I can't believe I walked around with blinders on for so long. Here's
Christine Kraling saying, I think we notice so much more as we get older.
Right.
I think that's true.
Yeah, I think once we realize that life is not a given, I think we start realizing that there's a lot to notice and take in out there.
And here's Beth Mack. I agree that enhanced appreciation of life may just come with age.
True.
You may be up at the top of the mountain, but you don't have to slide down the other side of the hill. You can breathe better up there. You can see more things up there. It's kind of got a wonderful sense of freedom.
It's kind of, well, freedom is an F word. Freedom is what it's all about.
Is that one of your F words?
Yes, it's one of the final. I heard the best definition of freedom probably 20 years ago, and I've clung to it ever since. And the definition of freedom that I heard was, freedom is the complete lack of anxiety.
Whoa. That's the best kind of freedom.
It's the best kind of freedom, right? When you have no anxiety and you can breathe, just like what you were talking about, and that sense of freedom and anything's possible, and take a full breath of air in the lungs. It is freeing. And ultimately, the reason you want to live an effortless life, in my opinion, is to create that kind of freedom, to be in alignment with yourself and who you are, and to not have anxiety that you're choosing to take on.
Here we have Mindy Haynes saying, I've really enjoyed taking photos of the things that bring me joy. The flowers, the sunrise, the moon, my pup. Is it
Finnegan? Finnegan, I love it.
Yeah, and
that's interesting, because we talk about technology and how technology's changed a lot of things, but we would have never just taken random pictures of the moon or flowers back when we had to develop film. So now that we just have all this storage and it's all in the cloud somewhere, I take pictures all the time of stuff like that. And I think that's a gift that technology's actually given us.
Because you're capturing a little moment in time that made you feel good. Here we have Michelle Parr. I watched the fall turn into winter and winter turn into spring, sitting in my sunroom, watching the leaves fall and then bloom. I am so appreciative of life after having a second chance at life.
Good
so I must say, when you go through a death-defying chronic illness of some kind, it does leave you. I remember people used to say to me all the time on social media, you go into cancer one person and you come out another. And I think it is true. You're so much more appreciative of life.
Laura and I talked a lot about that in the writing of this and our conversations offline. And it does. Those things leave an indelible mark. and change a lot of things about the way you think and the way you live, and ultimately the legacy that you leave for the people around you.
Here's Marty Collum saying, wow, I want that kind of freedom with no anxiety. What kind of advice would you give to Marty?
I would say, Marty, when this book comes out, buy it.
And in the meantime, you can read this one, because I talk a lot about, I talk a lot about all the things that are annoying to women in particular: hot flashes, expanding waistlines, and leaky bladders, and all those things. But a majority of the book is really about freeing yourself from the concept of age. Right. You like your F, freeing yourself.
Right.
And then the whole last chapter is about the soul and letting go. I remember when Laura and I were writing one chapter about stress, and she says, how about just, will it matter in 5 years? Did you notice that we picked an F word? 5 years. But I mean, that's really it. Because most of the time, if you can be totally bugged and you can say, is this going to matter in 5 years? You have to answer it honestly. No, I won't even remember this moment.
But I will say, it's funny. One of the things that I thought about with our conversation is when the fact that we're all in this predicament, right? One of the things I've been telling people is go forward 5 years and look back on this time that we've been given and wonder and look at yourself and go, based on my attitude and my behavior right now, what am I likely to regret doing or not doing during this time that I should have done or not done?
Ooh, good.
Because I think if you've got a bad attitude, or you're not embracing, or you're not looking for it, you might look back on this and go, I had so much time to learn something, or to do something, or to read something, or to write something, and I didn't do it because I was so worried about when it was going to end and what was going to happen. And I had all this time that I just kind of wasted when I look back on it, and look at that through that lens and go, gosh, if I really had a chance, if I was going to regret something right now, is there something that I think I might regret, and can I fix it?
I love that. We have Sue Jeffrey saying, oh, Joan, you have the best guests.
Oh, I'm complimented by that. Thank you.
I agree. I think that what you just said is one of the most important things I've heard during the entire pandemic.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I appreciate it.
To reframe.
Yep.
The way you look at this time for however much longer it's going to last.
Yep.
Which is annoying.
Right.
But to look at it in terms of kind of my chapter title, will it matter in 5 years? This whole time is going to matter.
It will.
If you can put yourself ahead a year or two and look back on this time and say, what should I have been doing instead of just freaking out about it? I love that, because then you have a starting point.
Right.
Instead of being worried about no end point, you have a starting point to start fixing it, because fix is one of your words, right?
Fix is one of our words. It's fix is about the negative self-talk that you've got. We all have the voice inside our head that tells us what we can or what we can't, and what we're capable of, and how we can achieve and can't do. And the problem is most people confuse that voice with, oh, that's me. And the reality is it's not you. It's just a little voice in your head that you're giving power to. And if you can look at that voice like it's an actual person, not a part of you, and give it a name. In the book, I talk about that, and give that voice a stupid name. Give it a name that when you say it, you realize how stupid the person is and the voice that has to come out of it is. And if you give those thoughts a name, and you look at it for what they are, you'll never agree with them. And you can start fighting your way out of those thoughts and having better thoughts by recognizing these destructive thoughts for what they are. So fix is an F word, and it's about fixing that negative self-talk in your head that everybody's got, but figuring out, showing people a way to do it.
I mean, I've always thought of it as almost like a little switch in your head that you just go from fear to fantastic. Are you happy that I chose 2 F words?
I am. Thank you.
But I mean, it really is. And, this whole idea of, happiness is a choice. Fear and anxiety is actually a choice. And, I try to teach this to my children, that they can decide to be happy. Happy is something that exists inside of us if we choose to unwrap it.
It's true. I had a lesson that a guy taught me years ago, and it was one of the most empowering things I've ever learned. And we all think that when we're presented with something new, that we look at it objectively and we wait to see what happens with it, and then we draw our conclusions for what it is. But the reality of it is our mind doesn't work that way. Our ego doesn't let it. And what happens when we're approached with something new, we decide automatically whether we like it or not, whether we think it's stupid or not, whether we think it's great or not. And then we just go about trying to find all the evidence to prove ourselves right in our opinion. And it's very true. And you can do that, like you said. Decide what kind of day you're going to have before your feet hit the floor. When you're laying in bed, before you get up, before your feet touch the floor, decide what kind of day you're having. And I guarantee you, if you decide it, you'll find all the reasons to make it the way. If you decide it's going to be a terrible day, then you're going to stub your toe on the way to the bathroom. The water's not going to be hot enough. You'll find a million reasons in the day to not be happy and prove yourself right. But if you decide that you're going to have an awesome day, you're already saying, you're priming the pump for, I'm going to look for things that provide evidence to prove myself right. Your ego only wants to be right, so teach it.
We have Beth Malik here saying it's not easy, especially for children. It's a long time for kids not to be out being social. That's part of developing. I get that we have to do what we have to do, and I agree with you both, but it's not easy. And how do you explain this to kids? I have 2 teenagers, and they're saying they're bored, and that breaks my heart.
Oh, well, okay. Well, there's a lot to talk about here, isn't there? So I have 5 children. I've got 3 stepchildren and two sons, and the range in our household is from 9 to 19, and so I've got all spectrums of it. But one of the things that I think children, it is a very hard time. I mean, they're missing out on massive social norms that are just really a part of who they are. But they are learning to be bored. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
I agree.
I think boredom is something you have to learn to self-soothe, like you have to teach yourself how to go to sleep in life. I think you have to realize that boredom is just a part of life. And I think kids have been trained that if you have 2 minutes with nothing to do, there's a problem. And if you're my age or your age, you realize that there's no problem. That's a gift. And you have to figure out a way to do it. There's a mom in our area that her son says, when he says he's bored, she says, "That's awesome. Do you want to write thank you notes? or do you want to read? Do you want to read or write thank you notes? Those are your options." And every time he comes to her with bored, she says, "Thank you notes or read, what you want to do?" And he stopped coming to her.
Here's Sherry Pollard that says, "Thank you, Shaun and Joan. You're so inspirational to me. I'm keeping you both in my foxhole."
Yay! Yay!
I was worried way before this pandemic started. And I've talked to a lot of my friends about it, that I was really concerned about my teenagers, and I have 2 sets of twins. I don't know if I beat you or not. I have 7 kids. I got 4 of them in the house.
Yeah, you beat us.
Yeah, 2 sets of twins, 15.
You can win that. You can win that. It's all yours.
I'm 15 years old, and the other set is almost 17. Wow. I remember when my 3 older girls, who are now in their 30s, I took them to some Caribbean island, and I was so excited because through the hotel, we could arrange a boat that was going to take us to this little private beach. Mm. But there wasn't a dock. So they were going to, put the anchor down, and we were going to get out, and we were going to probably be up to our waist. We were going to walk up onto the beach. They were going to catch fish and cook them fresh. And I was so excited. And I said, "But you can't take, anything electric with you. You can't take your phone or your music or anything." And they were like, "But we won't have anything to do." I said, "That's kind of the idea for the day." And I mean, they looked at me like mortified. But I've been really worried with this next generation, the ones that are now teenagers, that they weren't learning how to be alone. Because I find that they go into their bedroom when they come home from school, they're still conversing, still conversing with their friends all the way home. And they're doing this even if the person is next to them, by the way, because then you in the front seat driving, you don't hear what they're saying. And then when they're home, I'll go into my daughter Kim's room and I'll start talking. And all of a sudden, I'll hear someone sneeze. And she's just got someone on, FaceTime or however they do it. And that other person is basically in her room all afternoon.
That's right.
And that, it freaks me out because she's not learning how to be alone. And we all need to know how to be alone in life.
It's important. And I think our younger generation definitely has a hard time with it, but I don't know that they're less than for it. I just think it's different. I think it's, every generation thinks the next generation is problematic and lazy, right? Every generation does. So, and we're doing the same thing, but at the end of the day, they created this whole medium that you and I are on now, where we're in our house thousands of miles apart and we're being social. And I think that they're going to do some great things in the world, but because of what's normal for them. I think the biggest problem as parents right now is we can't solve all our children's problems. And if somebody's bored and your children are bored and that bothers you, then off record, I would say, then go figure out how to volunteer somewhere. Take them somewhere to volunteer and give back. Because if you're bored and you're unhappy, if you want to start helping other people, it's the fastest way to pull yourself out and realize what you're grateful for and what the world is made of, and see good in the world and realize that you can have an impact, however small. It's great. So go somewhere.
It makes you a little more appreciative for what you have.
Of course. Yeah. Isn't that what we all want our children to be?
Yeah. By the way, where are you coming to us from?
I'm in Atlanta.
Atlanta. All right.
Georgia,
well,
yeah.
I kept you a long time today, longer than usual, but everybody loved you so much.
You're so sweet. I'm telling you, the fact that I'm talking to Joan Lunden, my day, week, and month, and year has been made. This is you have been an idol for me in my life, and at a crucial time throughout in your career. And I just you were just somebody I always looked up to, and just thought of the fact that I'm having a one-on-one conversation with you is just, my day is done. I'm all good.
Well, you were an awesome rock star guest, and I thank you so, so much. And I would definitely I just wrote a little note. I think Jonathan said the book is going to come out early 2021. Maybe?
Early 2021 is the plan. He wants it to be after the election cycle. So
that's right. Yeah, you don't want to be mixed up in that. So everybody, we all have our calendars and our phones. Just go to January 2nd.
And if they want to go to my website, they can kind of keep abreast of it. And it's my name. It's ShaunRawls.com. Is my website, just like it's on the screen, just ShaunRawls.com. And then I'm also on Facebook as Shaun Rawls Author, and I populate the book info about both of those things. We'll have book info for people if they want to go there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really have enjoyed it, and I hope I've done something good in your world as well.
Absolutely. I can tell by everybody who's been with us that you have.
You're awesome. Thank you, Joan. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. So everybody, tomorrow we're going to be talking with Dr. Neil Schultz. Remember, he was here once before. He's my dermatologist. He's one of the brightest men ever in medicine. I mean, he really is. You're going to love him, even though we're talking about skin cancer. But remember, the sunshine's now coming back. We all have to be careful. And here's Cricket, you're saying, I'm going to watch this again to make some notes that I missed. That's terrific. And I don't know if you guys remember, because it was maybe the first, she might have been the first guest I had. Lynn Lyons, a psychotherapist that deals in anxiety, and sleeplessness and family issues. We're going to have her on Thursday, and it will be exactly 8 weeks later that we first talked to her about how to deal with this pandemic. So I love the fact that we're going to say, who could have ever thunk it that we were going to be back here again 8 weeks later talking about this. And then on Friday, Jackie Falco, how about that? And her name just happens to start with F. Jackie is a fabulous nutritionist. She specializes in young people, teenagers, but of course it's all the advice that we should be taking too. And I'm really excited to have her with us on Friday, especially since it's going into the Memorial Day weekend. Remember, it's a 3-day weekend. In fact, I'm not going to be here that Monday. And we want to have our head on straight. We don't want to go crazy. It's probably not so bad because of the fact that we're not going to be with the whole, neighborhood celebrating, or at least maybe in some areas, I don't know, we might be able to have a little bit more control over what we eat. But that'll be fun for Friday. All right. So tomorrow, the dermatologist, one of my favorite people, and his name is Dr. Neil Schultz. So everybody have a good day. I'll see you back here tomorrow. I'm so happy that you all really enjoyed this conversation with Shaun Rawls. All right. Bye-bye.